Salems Lot is the new film streaming on HBO Max, and if that name sounds familiar, it's either because you've seen the 1979 miniseries, or you've read the book by Stephen King. It follows the story of Ben Myers, who grew up in a small Maine town and became a very successful author. He's now revisiting that small town, doing research for his book, but while he's there, a string of mysterious disappearances and deaths are happening all around him. And what is causing this, you may ask? Well, vampires is the answer. They've moved in across the street. And now it's up to Ben and a motley crew to kill all these vampires and save the town of Salem's Lot. This is, as I mentioned earlier, the second adaptation of Salem's Lot, with the first being a TV miniseries from 1979. I want to emphasize the original was a miniseries, not a movie, because I think that is an important note to make on why this 2024 adaptation failed for me. This story has an enormous amount of characters, and with a bunch of characters comes a bunch of subplots. The 1979 adaptation was a two-part miniseries that combined over 3 hours of film total. It was made that long, not because they wanted it to be that long, but in order to tell this story, it needs to be that long. This new 2024 Salems Lot is almost half that amount of time. Now, if you want to be a shorter movie, by all means, be a shorter movie. Tons of people hate sitting through long movies. But when you're a shorter movie, you have to cut some of the characters out and remove the subplots, which this movie does not do. The movie is simply overstuffed to the point where, even in the third act, characters who were not even major players in the slightest are now incredibly important characters in the final scenes. They felt like side characters at the beginning, but now they're being treated like main roles. Out of the millions of stories that could be told in this, the one that they choose for the emotional hook is the weakest in my opinion. Instead of having something interesting, it's this very, very boring romantic subplot between Ben and a girl from the town named Susan. Now, this love story is underbaked and it is awkward. There is no chemistry between the two actors, and it ends up feeling more like an awkward Hallmark movie than it does a film that deserves to be treated with respect. Despite lots of the scary stuff in this movie being pretty effective. The vampires are scary, but it's difficult to make a non-scary vampire. There's just no emotional hook to make you care about this. I think that the cinematography borderlines on fantastic, being very creepy, but it's unfortunate that the rest of the movie doesn't carry this creepy mood. It borders on camp through all of it. It ends in this very awkward middle ground that lots of Stephen King adaptations struggle with being stuck in between campy and serious without ever committing to a particular mood. It's easy to fall into this trap because I think Stephen King is naturally a very pulpy writer. His stories are silly, but his characters are very well, and that's why they work. This just doesn't have strong characters. But now, I can deal with campy in a story, but what I cannot deal with is laziness, and I find that this screenplay is just lazy. Now, if I were to tell you that vampires are real, and they're taking over the town, and that we gotta go kill a guy so we can stop this, you'd probably say I'm crazy. At the very least, you'd say, why is this happening, you know? But that's not a single thing that a single character in this movie thinks. It's, every single character, the second they hear vampires are attacking the town, they think, oh, well, that's the most logical possible solution. And there's a kid in this movie, his name is Mark, and Mark just goes through the movie like a mini Rambo. He probably grows up to be Blade, and he's a one-man killing machine with no remorse. And remind you, this is a 10-year-old kid in the movie, and a 10-year-old kid, if a 10-year-old kid stabs somebody in the heart, they're not going to be cool about it. They're going to be a 10-year-old kid. That's not normal. It becomes goofy at the end. The movie doesn't have time to do anything interesting with any of the characters because it's so short. Everybody feels very indifferent to the deaths of the neighbors and friends, which adds to this emotional emptiness of the movie as a whole. When you're trying to portray this small town, you think of this small town feel. That's everybody in the town cares about each other, and everybody knows about each other. When a family loses somebody, that affects the emotional reaction of the rest of the town. Instead, they just are indifferent. This reaction is lacking, making all the residents of Salem's Lot feel incredibly cold. Overall, while I think that some of the visuals of the movie can be fun, like they have a really cool thing where they have a cross and it glows, and I think that's fun. And the vampires are fun. It's fun. Vampires are fun, but the movie just lacks a hook to it that gets me to want to invest in this story and invest in the characters. It's just overcrowded, making this film an incredibly subpar film. Thanks for watching this review. I hope you liked it, and if you didn't, I hope you like the next one better. What did you think about Salem's Lot? Did you think it was any good? Tell me in the comments, and please like and subscribe.